Lying on the hospital bed, I could clearly feel that my life was coming to an end. The doctor said this illness was the result of years of overwork. For the past 15 years, I had poured all my energy into my family until my body was completely drained. But I have no regrets. I, Rachel, was born in the countryside. I had no higher education, no prestigious degree, yet compared to the educated women in the city, I was in no way inferior. Back then, I relied on farming, slaughtering pigs, hauling cement, and collecting bottles and cans, scraping together every penny. I pinched and saved every meal to put my husband David through school, then ran around making arrangements so he could get a stable job. I guided him from a poor, penniless young intellectual who had lost his parents early to the distinguished, polished university professor he is today. David has always been humble and deeply loving toward me. Everyone admired my good fortune and said I had an eye for men. Even the boy I once picked up from the snow has now grown up, started his own family, and built a career. You may not be extraordinarily successful, but at least Eric is a filial son who knows how to care. Looking back on my life, the hardships I endured were worth it. I did not live in vain. I tried to hold on to my last breath, waiting for my husband David and my son Eric. I wanted to see them one last time to have them send me off. I don't know why they still hadn't arrived. Maybe they were stuck in traffic. Not long ago, I had bought Eric the car he had always dreamed of. Perhaps he was driving carefully, and that slowed him down. Or maybe David was caught up with urgent matters at the university. In recent years, he has been busier than ever, constantly traveling abroad for work. Even at his age, the university still doesn't ease his workload. In short, there must have been something keeping them. In the past, I would have waited patiently in silence, but now I couldn't hold on much longer. I forced myself to turn toward the nurse beside me. She gently comforted me. Mrs. Rachel let me call them again. She called David first. After a long series of rings, no one answered. She tried again, still no answer. Then she called Eric. The call cut off in less than 2 seconds. My chest tightened in panic and I coughed, my breathing ragged. The nurse began to fret as well. One person, 2 people. What could they possibly be so busy with their time like this? She muttered, "No, I have to call again." This time we were fortunate. Someone finally picked up. She exhaled in relief and put it on speaker. "Hello, may I ask when you and your father will arrive? Your mother probably doesn't have much time left." I stared at the phone, my heart overflowing with hope. Who could have guessed that in the very next second, a cold, irritated voice would come through the line. Why isn't she dead yet? And that woman isn't my mother. A filthy country woman like her. Does she deserve that title? My real mother is Vanessa, a renowned professor who studied abroad. I'm at the wedding of my mother and my father right now, the wedding of the century. Don't disturb us. If we miss the auspicious time, will you take responsibility? And as for that shameless old woman who stole my mother's place for 15 years, she'd better be sensible and close her eyes for good. With that, he hung up without hesitation. The nurse froze speechless. My head buzzed as though struck by hundreds of bolts of lightning. Was that really my son? The boy I had loved with all my heart, the one everyone praised as dutiful. How could he say such things? And wasn't either one who picked him up from the snow? How could he be Vanessa's son? Why was he the son of David and Vanessa? Weren't they supposed to be just former classmates? What? Wedding of the century. On the very day I was about to die, my husband went to marry another woman. I couldn't understand it, and I refused to believe it. Rage and disbelief boiled inside me, my chest heaving violently. My whole body trembled, muscles twitching uncontrollably, my eyes widening in shock. At that moment, amid the nurse's panicked cries, my breathing stopped. I died with my eyes wide open, perhaps because my resentment was too deep. After my death, my soul hovered in the air, witnessing scenes that completely overturned everything I thought I knew. The road I had walked countless times while collecting recyclables was now lined with red carpet, the sound of drums and gongs filling the air. At the front, lion dancers cleared the way, followed by 10 miles of lavish dowries. Crowds gathered in throngs, and there was my husband, the man I had loved my entire life. David dressed in a brilliant red wedding robe, sitting tall on horseback. His smile carried a hint of the youthful shyness he once had, yet his demeanor was stately as he clasped his hands and bowed to those around him, softly reciting lines of poetry. 55 years apart, Ink cannot describe the yearning. Today, to finally wed the one in my dreams, I joyfully proclaim it to the world. Behind him was a sedan chair carried by 8 men, dazzlingly ornate, inside St. Vanessa, wearing a phoenix coronet and a crimson bridal gown, her beauty radiant. The wedding procession was grand and ostentatious, drawing every gaze, a so-called wedding of the century in extravagant Chinese traditional style. Years ago, when I married David, he told me that life was too hard, that he couldn't give me a proper wedding. He promised that once he became successful, he would make it up to me with a grand ceremony. I believed him. I didn't demand any bride price. Instead, I devoted everything to supporting him through school. Later, when life had improved, he claimed that as a professor, he was no longer young, and holding such an elaborate wedding would make people laugh at him and damage his career. I believed him again, telling myself that married life mattered more than outward appearances. Besides, with children already grown, why waste money on vanity? Even after retirement, I still use my pension sparingly, collecting trash to earn a bit more, just to save something for the family. But now there were no excuses, no concerns about extravagance. Looking at the scene before me, the crowd whispered with admiration. What a beautiful love story from a past generation, truly enviable. David and Vanessa, just hearing their names, sounds like something out of a novel. I always said Rachel didn't deserve Professor David. Turns out she was the third party all along, shamelessly interfering with their true love. God, even her name, Rachel, is so unbearably provincial. She was cruel too, couldn't have children, so she stole Mrs. Vanessa's baby to raise as her own. I screamed in fury, cursing at the top of my lungs, but no one could hear me. Behind the bridal procession, the scene shifted to sleek luxury cars. The son I had raised with all my heart, Eric, was carefully helping Vanessa into the BMW I had bought with my own money. "Be careful, Mom," he said warmly, but Vanessa frowned, her expression displeased. "I don't want to sit in a car that a peasant woman has touched." Eric hurried to reassure her. "Don't worry, Mom, this car is spotless. I've never let that old woman lay a hand on it." Only then did her face soften as she stepped inside, satisfied. In that instant, I understood everything. No wonder after I bought the car, Eric never once drove me anywhere. Every time I asked, he made excuses about being inexperienced, worried for my safety. In truth, he thought I was dirty. The motorcade moved on, until finally it stopped before a grand Chinese-style villa. David got down from his horse, took Vanessa's hand, and whispered, "My dear, just as you wished, I didn't let her find out about this place, not even letting me step inside. So it turned out he had secretly bought a new house for their wedding. My own husband thought I was filthy, too." Amid the lavish banquet with endless toasts and laughter, the hospital finally called. They informed the family that I had passed away, and someone needed to come sign the papers and arrange the funeral. Eric said coldly, "Take care of her funeral." I don't blame her for picking me up back then and causing me to be separated from my real mother for 15 years. That was already more than enough. But I have no obligation to her. David added, "She was never my wife. In my heart, there has only ever been Vanessa. A peasant woman like that doesn't deserve for me to arrange her funeral." After speaking, he turned and patted the back of Vanessa's hand in approval. "You were always the clever one, the one who taught me to trick her into thinking she was barren. Otherwise, how would she have so willingly devoted herself, like a nanny, raising our son with such care?" Vanessa's lips curved in a smile, her eyes brimming with triumph. I laughed then, laughed until tears streamed down my face. "Vanessa, oh Vanessa, all these years for David's sake, I treated you like a younger sister. I worried about you, alone and struggling overseas. I not only agreed when David sent you money and secret, but sometimes I even quietly gathered my own savings to send to you. I gave everything I had for each of you, and how did you repay me? You deceived me, spinning me in circles, keeping me in the dark. The family I worked so hard to build turned out to be nothing more than a ridiculous illusion. My husband was never mine, and even my child was not my own. My entire life had become the biggest joke. No one remembered that today was my birthday. No one pitied me enough to take care of my funeral. My death anniversary would forever be the same day as their wedding. What bitter irony. In the hospital, the nurse was nearly in tears from panic. She called every number in my contacts, but no one would come to sign the papers. Just then, a call came from an unfamiliar number. She quickly answered, as though grasping at the last shred of hope. When I saw the number, It stirred a faint sense of familiarity in me. The call connected. On the other end, there was a long silence as if the person couldn't believe it. Then a voice trembling slightly. "Rachel, you finally picked up. I didn't mean to bother you, but I heard David was getting married today. Did you two separate? Or did he do something wrong to you? Don't be afraid. If he dared to hurt you, I'd make sure he paid. Don't think too much. This is something I should do. After all, I'm your brother." His last word came out softly, almost like he was only saying it to himself. In that moment, I realized who it was. Jason, the foster brother who had lived with me since we were 5. He was intelligent, gentle, hardworking, and always so considerate toward me. My parents used to joke that the two of us might end up together. But when I met David, I was drawn to his air of refinement. Compared to Jason's sincerity, I preferred the young intellectual from the city whose mouth was full of flowery words about love. And so, I only ever saw Jason as an older brother while I clung to David every day. After we married, David feared gossip and forbade me from staying in touch with Jason. He said, "He's not your real brother. People will talk." So all these years, we never spoke again. But why did Jason say that I never picked up his calls? Jason went on, as though he was used to talking without expecting a reply. "Oh, right. Do you still have money? Don't save too much and make yourself suffer. Today's your birthday. I sent some money to your old account again. Don't worry about me. I'm a man. I don't have much to spend on. I remember you like clothes with floral patterns. Buy yourself a few sets. You look beautiful in anything." My nose burned and tears rolled down my face. Drop by drop. All these years, only he had treated me the same as before. No wonder the number felt so familiar. It was because I had seen it a few times on David's phone. And that other bank account, it must have been David's as well. He had impersonated me to receive money all these years. As for me, I had never once touched a single penny of it. In my entire life, my husband never bought me even one new dress. For years, I hadn't bought anything for myself either. Both my husband and my son always said I was old, that my figure had gone bad, and that nothing I wore would look good anymore. At first, the nurse didn't understand, but now she looked at me with eyes full of pity. Finally, she couldn't hold back her choked voice as she spoke. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Rachel passed away 2 hours ago. Could you come and sign the papers to arrange her funeral?" The other end of the line immediately went silent. Then came the sound of something heavy crashing to the ground. When the voice spoke again, it was broken and chaotic. Half an hour later, an older man appeared at the hospital room door. His clothing was simple, and he leaned on a cane. Though aged, the lines of his face were still strong. His tall, lean frame dignified. Only his right leg limped slightly, and in his rush he nearly stumbled. When his eyes fell on the body on the bed, covered fully by the white sheet, he suddenly froze, unable to take another step. The hand clutching the cane trembled so violently he could barely control it. Slowly he reached out, gently lifting a corner of the sheet. His gaze instantly went hollow, drained of all life. He softly closed my eyes, then collapsed to the floor, exhausted. His hoarse voice whispering in pain, "I thought that as long as I didn't disturb you, you would be happy. I was wrong. I was so wrong. If only I hadn't let go back then, maybe things wouldn't have turned out this way." With those words, he clutched his chest and coughed violently, until finally he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Bright red as vivid, as the faded red string still tied around his wrist. A long while later, he shakily pulled a small wrapped cloth from his pocket. Inside was a stack of worn bills and a savings book. Carefully, he placed it in the nurse's hands. "Please help me buy her a proper grave." "Thank you." Only then did I realize it. Throughout his life, he had never once spoken aloud the secret buried in his heart. Regret, resentment, sorrow, helplessness, all these emotions surged together. If I could live again, I swore I would never let myself endure such tragedy. Suddenly, everything went dark, and I lost consciousness completely. "Rachel, you and Jason, are you sure you want to split today's work points with David and Vanessa?" The scorching sunlight streamed through the gaps of my straw hat, dazzling yet real. I had truly been reborn back to the year I was 17. At that time, David and Vanessa had already been sent down to the countryside for a year and a half. Unlike other educated youths, they rarely went out to the fields. If they didn't work, they earned no work points. Without work points, they got no rations. At first, they lived off the savings they brought from the city and the subsidies they received when they were relocated. Then they met me. Whenever David sighed that he wasn't feeling well, I immediately took on most of his farm work as well as Vanessa's. I even secretly gave them part of my own work points. He complained that the communal meals were poor and quality and crowded. So every day I cooked better food and invited them to my house to eat. Over time, they came to see it as natural, even pushing further in their demands. Like today, they had barely worked in the fields for 5 minutes before they wanted to leave. It was clear they had no intention of putting in any effort, dumping all the work onto me. The work I couldn't finish would naturally fall on Jason's shoulders, meaning the two of us were toiling away just to earn work points for them. Not far away, a thin young man with fair skin walked over with a gentle young woman. It was David, 18 years old, his delicate features carrying the proud air of an intellectual. He held out a lotus leaf, already withered by the sun, and spoke in a poetic tone. "Rachel, you are the large dewdrop resting beneath the lotus leaf, and I am the small dewdrop lying on top of it. This leaf suits you. Take it." When I didn't respond, he assumed I was once again charmed by his flowery words. His eyes gleamed with pride, as if everything was under his control. "Today, Vanessa and I aren't feeling well, so we'll head back first. You've worked hard. Remember to share some extra work points with us. Oh, and tonight we'd like to eat wild chicken and crab apples. Vanessa's been tired lately and needs nourishment. Tell Jason to prepare it for us." Beside him, the young woman wore a hat woven from lotus leaves, holding a pink lotus blossom in her hand. Her features were delicate, her figure slim and frail. She smiled softly. "Thank you in advance, Rachel. You know, I've never done heavy labor since I was a child. Ever since I came to the countryside, my health has been weak. I can't possibly compare to you. You grew up in the village, strong and resilient, truly admirable." They spoke as if it was certain I would agree, then turned their backs and left. I watched their silhouettes close together, the intimacy between them filling the air. My teeth clenched so tightly, it felt they might shatter. Their relationship was so obvious. Why in my past life had I been so blind? I tightened my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. "Stop." The two turned back, surprise on their faces. I held the withered lotus leaf in my hand, sneering as I deliberately raised it high for all the nearby villagers to see. My voice rang louder than usual. "City folks truly are clever, trading a tattered leaf for work points. Even sharper than capitalists, aren't you? To outsiders, it may look like you value sentiment, but to those who see clearly, it's nothing but shameless exploitation." As soon as the words left my mouth, chuckles rose among the farmers, laboring in the fields. David's face darkened, clearly embarrassed. Vanessa was just as startled. "Rachel, what do you mean by that? David chose this lotus leaf carefully for you." "Oh," I laughed coldly. "So you had the time to stroll by the pond picking flowers, but not the strength to work in the fields. Outwardly, you're educated youths, responding to the call to return to the countryside for re-education through labor. In reality, you're here for leisure, treating this as a holiday retreat." My words instantly stirred dissatisfaction among the crowd, especially the other educated youths who truly worked hard. They had long disliked David and Vanessa. "Exactly. We've all been scorched by the sun until our skin turned dark, while they're still pale and smooth. Couldn't manage life in the city, so they came here and live off women. While we sweat in the fields, they sneak off to flirt by the pond." If this had been my past life, I would have immediately rushed to defend David, unable to bear anyone speaking ill of him. But this time I remained silent, letting their accusations stand as my silent agreement. The murmurs grew louder and louder. David and Vanessa's faces turned deathly pale. Fear and anger flashed in their eyes as they prepared to explain. Suddenly, I raised a hand to my forehead, staggering slightly, clutching my chest as if in pain. With a retching sound, I spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Gasps of horror erupted all around. Panic spread through the crowd. David and Vanessa recoiled a few steps, their faces drained of all color. Just as I was about to collapse, a pair of strong, steady hands. Suddenly, a pair of strong arms wrapped tightly around my waist, steadying me so I wouldn't collapse. The next moment, my whole body felt weightless as I was lifted up and held securely against a sturdy chest. The sharp lines of the young man's jaw tensed, sweat dripping from his temples from labor under the blazing sun. His breath was still uneven, for he had rushed over from the other side of the field. "Rachel, where do you feel unwell?" Jason, 17 years old, the same age as me, was tall and solidly built. His skin was tanned, his features angular and resolute, yet he was always quiet, rarely speaking, working diligently every day. To others, he might seem plain and clumsy. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm of emotions within me. What mattered now was handling the situation at hand. So I secretly pinched lightly at his elbow, an old signal I used to give when we played tricks as children. Sure enough, he froze and looked at me for 2 seconds, then let his tense shoulders ease slightly. Still, he didn't let go, continuing to hold me tightly. I leaned into him, speaking weakly. Since childhood, I've always been healthy, never once sick, but in the past half year, my body has been breaking down. Jason's expression turned grave. That's because you've taken on too much work that wasn't yours, Rachel. You've exhausted yourself. Jason had a gift for herbal medicine. He knew every plant in the mountain behind the village, and everyone called him the little healer. His words carried weight. At once, the people around us began murmuring. Goodness, I watched this girl grow up. She used to be so strong, and now she's worked herself to the point of spitting blood. Meanwhile, some folks keep claiming they're weak, but look perfectly fine all day long. Maybe they're just pretending. I've thought the same for a long time. Just because they are from the city, does that give them the right to bully a village girl? Everyone knows Rachel is the most admirable girl in the whole village. Her father is the brigade secretary, her mother a veteran textile worker, and she's been betrothed since childhood to a boy skilled in both hunting and medicine, cherished by his whole family. Before those educated youths came here, did anyone ever see Rachel working herself to death like this? Some people really ought to learn their place. From now on, earn your own work points. Don't think you can keep living off others. David and Vanessa's face is flushed scarlet, caught between shame and fury. Just then, an older village woman looked at me, shaking her head with a sigh. Rachel, listen to me, child. You must be wise in choosing a husband. Pale-faced boys like that, keeping a sneaky girl clinging to them, are not trustworthy. The elderly always did see the truth sharply. I nodded lightly, coughing. You're absolutely right. A man like that isn't worth marrying. I was far too foolish before. Starting today, they'll earn their own work points. Today's scene was just the first step in severing ties with them. If I didn't act first, with the way those two operated, they would surely twist the story, weeping and pretending to be pitiful, making it seem as though I was the jealous one who hated because I couldn't have what I wanted. Then others would think the problem lay with me. But now it was different. After today, everyone would only remember how shamelessly they exploited me. I ignored the two of them. Their heads hung low as the villagers scolded them mercilessly. Jason carried me away from the crowd, through the quiet bamboo grove back home. The moment we stepped inside, I immediately straightened up, no longer pretending to be ill. I was just about to speak with a mocking remark when I noticed him standing still, dazed, staring at his now empty arms with a faint look of confusion. His lashes lowered gently, hiding his expression. A fleeting loneliness passed through his eyes, his voice a little strained. I was out of line just now. I'll explain things clearly to them. All right, when I was 17, in order to chase after the person in my heart, I deliberately kept my distance from Jason, the boy who had grown up with me like an older brother. I was afraid of being misunderstood, afraid my image would be affected. Forget being carried openly in front of others. Even speaking a few extra sentences with him, I was cautious. But now, I was no longer the Rachel of 57. Why should I need to explain anything? Are you worried people will misunderstand our relationship? I asked softly, teasing. Well, boys grow up and you can't keep them close forever, can you? He immediately looked up, flustered. No, Rachel, I really don't. Don't what? He opened his mouth to say something, but stopped short. His face was already burning red. I couldn't hold back my laughter. No matter how slow Jason might be, he realized I was deliberately teasing him. His gaze grew complicated, tinged with helplessness. Where exactly are you hurt just now? He asked suddenly. It took me a moment to realize what he meant before I chuckled. Oh, that. Just a little bleeding from my gums. Open your mouth, let me check. Since childhood, Jason had always been my dentist. Out of habit, I opened my mouth, but the seriousness in his eyes made me feel oddly shy, and I quickly closed it again. Be good. Let me see if it's inflamed. If you leave it untreated, it could turn into tooth decay, and that wouldn't be good. My whole body stiffened. In my past life, my teeth had been fine, but after marrying David, I developed cavities. Life was hard then, craving a little sweetness, but unwilling to spend on candy, I bought only the cheapest brown sugar from the department store. I'd nibble on it slowly, making a bag last for months. Bit by bit, my teeth went bad. Every flare-up left me writhing on the floor in pain. But once the pain subsided, I would take another piece of sugar. Again and again, until by the time I was past 60, almost none of my teeth were good. Lost in these memories, I suddenly felt a calloused finger brush the corner of my lips. With gentle pressure, Jason opened my mouth and leaned in to carefully examine. His eyes fixed intently, as though searching every detail. He stared for so long that my saliva began to pool, and instinctively I closed my mouth. To my shock, my tongue brushed lightly across the tip of his finger. It was just a fleeting touch before I pulled away, but both of us froze. His finger hovered awkwardly in the air for a moment before he jerked it back stifly. "It's fine, just mild inflammation." Then he turned, picking up the bamboo spear propped in the corner, preparing to leave. Alarmed, I asked quickly, "Where are you going now?" "Those two are as healthy as oxen. They don't need extra nourishment." He didn't look back. Only the tips of his ears, red as fire, gave him away. "I'm going to find something to strengthen you." Behind the village was dam forest, full of wild game. But the mountains there were dense and treacherous, crawling with snakes and poisonous insects, dangerous beyond measure. Ordinary people only dared to gather wild greens or mushrooms along the edges. The delicacies deep inside could only be hunted by those brave and skilled enough to risk their lives. That's why, if families wanted meat, they usually had to use money and ration coupons to buy it. In the old days, when most households could only afford to eat meat once a month, my family was better off. We could eat it once a week. But ever since David and Vanessa came, they insisted on eating polished rice and refined flour, and they demanded meat and vegetables with every meal. Though they looked frail, their appetites were anything but small. To satisfy them, our food stores dwindled at an alarming rate. Meat was never enough, and we had to rely on Jason to hunt in the mountains. My parents pitied me, and Jason always indulged me, even in those hard times when it meant supporting two outsiders. None of them ever complained. All we knew back then was to work harder and harder. To be precise, the four of us, my parents, Jason, and I, were the ones who broke our backs to support David and Vanessa. But from now on, it would never be like that again. That day, Jason walked ahead of me with a sickle, clearing the path while I followed closely behind. He was quieter than usual, his eyes carrying both helplessness and reproach. He thought the mountains were dangerous and had never allowed me to come along before. But this time, nothing could dissuade me. I couldn't remember exactly when, in my past life, Jason broke his leg. I only knew it happened on a rainy night when I was burning with fever. He had gone into the mountains to find medicine and disappeared for half the night. When the villagers finally found him, his whole body was covered in blood. In this life, I would never let that happen again. Once the traps were set, all that was left was to wait. Silently, he handed me a sprig of mulberries, each berry plump and ripe. I didn't know when he had picked them. Startled, I accepted it. For an instant, it was as though I had returned to the time before I met David. Back then, I loved following Jason everywhere. Whatever he did, I wanted to do too. Except when he went up the mountain. Whenever he worried, I'd be bored. He would distract me, either by giving me food or some little toy. As I ate the mulberries, the distant, unfamiliar gap that had formed between us over the past year seemed to dissolve. As though if I turned my head, I would find he had always been there, never leaving my side. The thin barrier between us gradually melted away in that quiet closeness. A strange sound suddenly came from the trap. Jason's eyes sharpened instantly, like an eagle's. His taut arms coiled with the tension of a hunting cat ready to pounce. In the blink of an eye, he dashed forward. And when he returned, a plump pheasant was clamped tight in the bamboo snare. On the way down the mountain, he gathered a few fresh mushrooms. The rain had left the trail slick, and I nearly slipped off the slope in distraction. His hand shot out quickly, gripping my arm and steadying me. I stood firm again, and he let out a sigh, finally speaking in his low voice. "Rachel, the mountain is dangerous. Don't come with me again." I didn't even think before protesting, "But it's even more dangerous for you alone." "I want to go with you." He lifted his eyes to me. In the depths of his dark gaze, my own face was reflected clearly. After a few seconds, he said nothing more. Instead, his steps grew slower, steadier, so that I could follow easily. In summer, even by 6 in the evening, it still wasn't quitting time. Most people were still working in the fields. As we neared home, the neighbor's door suddenly opened, and a girl in a blue shirt stepped out. Her hair was braided into 2 long glossy plaits. Her eyes, one single-leadered, one double, sharp and lively. It was Angela Chen. She and I had once been close friends for more than 15 years. But after David and Vanessa arrived, the bond between us slowly cracked. It couldn't tolerate how I went out of my way to please Vanessa, nor how blindly I adored David. Many times, she grew angry, saying I was bewitched, urging me to stay away from them. But I never listened. Eventually, she stopped caring altogether. Not until the night before my wedding in my past life did she seek me out again, pressing 5 yuan, a huge sum at the time, into my hand as a wedding gift. Her eyes were red as she scolded me for not knowing how to value the right man, for not treasuring the one beside me. She wept, wishing me happiness in the future. It was only then that I realized she had liked Jason all along. Looking back, she had never truly hidden her feelings. It was only that, at the time, all my attention was consumed by David, and I had been too blind to see it. Right now, Angela and I were at our worst. We hadn't spoken in 3 months, locked in a cold war. She didn't even glance at me as she walked straight over to Jason, handing him 2 pork and fermented bean buns, still wrapped in oiled paper, the steam rising faintly. "Jason, you've worked hard today. My family just steamed these buns with pickled beans and pork. Have 2 to build your strength." In these times, flour was already considered a luxury, and meat was even more precious. Jason immediately stepped back 2 paces, his voice flat. "No need. Thank you. Besides, you forgot, I don't like fermented beans." She seemed to have expected him to refuse, so her expression didn't change. Her eyes swept past me for only a second, but her words struck like thorns. "I heard someone in the fields work themselves so hard today, they coughed up blood. Well, no surprise. She doesn't dare touch her own family's food stores. Gives everything away to those 2 white-eyed wolves, more generous than Buddha carving his own flesh to feed the eagles. Fine then. Today, consider yourself lucky. These 2 buns are wasted on you." With that, she shoved the oiled paper bundle into my hands and slammed her door shut. Jason stood beside me, holding his breath as though waiting for my reaction. After all, in my past life, I was quick-tempered. Aside from those 2 people, if anyone dared speak against me, I would always lash out instantly. But this time, I calmly lifted a bun, bit into it and said, "Only a fool turns down free food." And honestly, it's delicious. At 57, I hadn't known what it meant to be sharp-tongued but soft-hearted. Now I understood it perfectly. Jason hated fermented beans. Angela knew that well. But I loved them, and she knew that too. These buns, they weren't meant for him at all. In the past, to suit David and Vanessa's bland tastes, I had always cooked lightly seasoned dishes. But truthfully, my whole family loved spice. The best way to cook pheasant was stir-fried with fresh chili. I headed into the kitchen while Jason started the fire. With a few clean strokes, the knife chopped the bird into neat pieces. I set half aside and soaked the other half in salted water for 20 minutes to remove the gamey smell. Then drained it well. When the oil in the wok was hot, I tossed in garlic, scallions, chilies, and ginger, letting them release their fragrance before adding the pheasant. Rapeseed oil and spices melded with the meat, sending waves of mouth-watering aroma through the air. Jason looked up, catching my eye with surprise. I turned away casually. After playing nanny for 15 years, it'd be strange if I couldn't cook. Some things couldn't be explained. I could only brush them aside. Avoiding his probing gaze, I lit a second stove and used the other half of the pheasant to make soup with the lush mushrooms he'd picked, letting the broth grow sweet. He paused for a moment when feeding the firewood, then silently lowered his head and continued tending the flames. Focused on cooking, I didn't notice the small shift in him. I added a plate of stir-fried greens with garlic and another dish of spicy braised tofu. The rich fragrance soon filled the yard, making mouths water. Just then my parents came home. My father had spent the whole day driving a tractor for the production team, and my mother had just finished her shift at the textile factory. Smelling the aroma, my father sniffed appreciatively. "Looks like we're in for a feast tonight." My mother snorted. "Feast, don't laugh. This is made especially for you. At most, you'll get to sip a little broth. If you so much just take 2 more bites, your precious daughter will worry whether our 2 honored guests will starve to skin and bones." I had just stepped out of the kitchen, carrying the pot of pheasant soup when I caught her words. I lowered my head slightly, a pang of guilt flickering in me. Raising two mouths for free, there was no way my mother could feel no resentment. If she hadn't beaten me half to death, it was only because I was her own daughter. My mother glared at the pot of soup in my hands, and I snapped irritably. "Look, there's another pot just for those two." Jason's expression darkened at once, but before I could say anything more, the two people I despised most appeared. For the first time in their lives, David and Vanessa had actually gone to the fields to work. And even then, they were drenched in sweat and stumbling from exhaustion. The moment they overheard my mother's words, their shaky legs suddenly hurried forward with eagerness. David even tugged Vanessa's hand, smiling brightly. "Vanessa, Rachel made chicken soup for us." "Soup for you? What nonsense. Do the two of you even deserve it?" With no outsiders around, I no longer bothered to pretend. I turned away with a scoff, brushing past them and heading straight toward the neighbor's house, leaving the two of them standing dumbstruck like fools. Behind me, Jason looked momentarily surprised. Then the corner of his mouth twitched as though fighting back a laugh. My parents, on the other hand, looked as if they had just witnessed something utterly unbelievable. I stopped at Angela's door, where the sound of an argument echoed from inside. "Girl, those 2 meat buns are gone. Did you take them over next door?" "No, I ate them myself." "Lies, your brother saw everything. You think our family is rich enough to flaunt like that? They eat delicacies every day. Do you ever see them give you anything? Yet you insist on playing the saint, poking your nose in where it doesn't belong. And don't tell me, today they're eating chicken again. If they actually let you drink even 1 spoon of that soup, I'll acknowledge you as my mother right here and now." I drew a deep breath and called out loudly, "Angela, open the door. I brought you chicken soup." The inside went silent. A moment later, the door opened. Auntie Lee, Angela's mother, stood there awkwardly, forcing a stiff smile. Angela herself stood in the doorway across from me. Our eyes met, and then as if on cue, we both broke into laughter. She understood me, and I understood her. Everything between us could still be mended. Between sisters, there had never been real hatred, just a matter of lowering our pride. When I returned home, David and Vanessa were still standing like statues by the doorway, while my parents had already seated themselves properly, waiting for me to serve dinner. Seeing me calmly pull out a chair and sit down without the usual enthusiasm of offering food to them, David and Vanessa's faces grew sour. David glanced at the table, frowning. "Rachel, even though today's dishes aren't exactly to our taste, I suppose they'll do, but how about this? You boil 4 eggs and add 2 more bowls of rice for us." His tone was the same arrogant, commanding one as always. "When are you planning to pay for your meals?" I asked coldly. "You've been eating for free over a year now. Do you plan to keep going?" I remembered clearly how someone once pounded his chest, swearing he'd never take advantage of me, not even for a single coin. "All lies." "My God," I said deliberately, driving out the words in exaggerated mockery. Who would have thought that the educated youth David would turn out to be this kind of man? In his teenage years, David had been the most arrogant, proud to the extreme, unable to bear even the smallest humiliation. To outsiders, he always bragged that he had paid me for food. Whether anyone believed him or not, at least it preserved his pride. As expected, he froze for a second, then hurriedly tried to defend himself. "I never said I wouldn't pay. It's just that you never mentioned it, so I didn't know how much to give." Beside him, Vanessa tugged at his sleeve, her eyes wary. I burst into laughter. "The two of you eat 7 mao every day. Over more than a year, let's round it up, 300 yuan in total. Pay up." The year was 1976, the average monthly income of a rural worker. In the village, a worker earned only a few yuan a month, and even that had to be converted from work points. Only official workers in town had fixed wages, along with monthly food coupons. Even my mother, a longtime factory worker, received only 15 yuan a month, let alone those two, who were essentially unemployed drifters. The moment David and Vanessa heard the number I named, both of them froze, nearly blurting out in shock. "That much," I sneered. "You eat better than a stay-toned restaurant every day, and the price I gave you is already cheap. Now it's too expensive for you to pay. Funny, you never complained about the cost while eating." David's face turned red with anger. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't deny that the food from my house was the best in the entire village. In the end, he could only press his lips tightly together. His eyes filled with that familiar manipulative coldness, his way of punishing me by pretending indifference. "Rachel," he said stiffly, "I thought you were different from the other village girls. I didn't expect you to be just as petty and calculating." Vanessa stayed silent, but her contemptuous gaze echoed his words. In my past life, that trick of theirs always worked. Just one comment like that, and my heart would soften, and I'd rush to please them. But now I felt nothing but disgust. I set down my chopsticks, glancing at my mother, knowing no one could handle this better than her. Calmly, she pulled out a broom and handed it to me. I didn't bother with any more words. I swung the broom and chased them out. "Let me tell you," I shouted. "I'm not only petty and calculating, I'm sharp-tongued too." David scrambled to pull Vanessa into his arms, shielding her as they stumbled out of reach. But he still couldn't keep his mouth shut. "Rachel, you'll regret this. Even if you beg me later, I won't give you a second glance. We don't need your food." The words had barely left his lips when a gnawed chicken bone suddenly came sailing from the sky, landing squarely on his forehead. A mocking voice drifted over from the neighbor's house. "Thick-skinned as you are, the only thing you deserve is chicken bones, and you still dare talk about pride." After that brief chaos, the yard finally grew quiet again. My parents exchanged a glance and nodded, satisfied. "Our daughter's finally grown up," they seemed to say. "Getting gum inflammation isn't such a bad thing," my mother quipped. One mouthful of blood, and she spat out that waterlogged brain too. "Today's a good day," my father said cheerfully, bringing out a bottle of aged liquor, usually reserved for New Year's. He poured 2 glasses for himself and my mother, but he didn't stop there. He poured a third and placed it in front of Jason with a grin. Jason hadn't even reacted when my mother exclaimed, "What are you doing? Giving liquor to a child?" My father raised a hand to stop her, smiling meaningfully. "Our future son-in-law should drink too, shouldn't he?" Jason's ears instantly flushed red, but his gaze remained steady as he nodded. When he lifted the glass, our eyes met. In the depths of his dark eyes burned a fiery brightness that unsettled me, and I quickly looked away. My mother's gaze darted between me and Jason, and she nodded rapidly, smiling. Yes, it's hot. That drink will help you sleep well tonight." Maybe it was because my wild outburst had left too deep an impression, or maybe it was fear of Mimi demanding that massive debt for food. But after that day, David and Vanessa no longer dared to linger around me. Of course, part of it was also because I no longer went to the fields, rarely even leaving the house. After being exposed to the sun for over a year, my once fair skin had turned rough and yellowed. I became so anxious that I used to cumberslisses as face masks every day. After all, what girl doesn't like to be pretty? Thankfully, my skin lightened easily, and with persistence, it improved a lot. Still, I couldn't help but think, if only I had snowflake cream. Snowflake cream, the Shanghai brand, was one of the true luxuries of this era. A single small jar of snowflake cream cost an entire month's wages for an ordinary worker. Not only was it frighteningly expensive, it also required industrial coupons to buy. Even if you had both money and coupons, there was no guarantee you could get it. Since it was a scarce luxury, everyone fought over. So for now, I could only think about it wistfully. That night, unable to sleep, I put on my clothes and slipped outside. I hadn't expected that, just as I stepped out, the boy across the way, who had been about to fall asleep, would open his eyes too. The dormitory for the educated youths was set up at the edge of the village, separated from the residential area by a wide field of reeds. The reeds grew thick and tall, said to be the perfect place for secret trysts. At midnight, with the world around us pitch black, except for faint starlight and a pale moon overhead, the sounds coming from the reed bed carried even more clearly. The moment I heard the voices, I almost burst out laughing. I had only intended to take a walk, but I had stumbled onto something amusing. "David, the food at the communal canteen is so unbearable. Look at me, I've gotten thinner. The dormitory is so cramped and hot, when it rains, it leaks, and someone snores so loudly I can't sleep." Vanessa whined, her voice dripping with grievance. David sighed deeply, sounding pained. "My poor Vanessa, you've suffered. Let me think of a way. Didn't you say before that Rachel's family has a spare room? David, why don't you coax her? She always listens to you." "Yes, coax her," Vanessa sneered. "With the way she worships you, she'll be like a little dog, begging to let us stay together in less than 2 days. I believe in you." Then the sounds turned even more obscene. My fingers itched to crush something. Just as I turned my head, looking for a tool, I noticed a thick tree root conveniently at hand. And there, Appearing when he shouldn't have, Jason stood quietly beside me. He touched the tip of his nose and smiled calmly, as though to say, good deeds need no name. I raised an eyebrow and immediately bent low, gripping the root, and swung it down hard at the perfect moment. A whole swath of reeds collapsed, covering the two inside, cutting off their view completely. Panic-stricken screams and groans followed. "Who's there?" But then they remembered they were sneaking around and quickly bit back their cries, not daring to shout too loudly. Taking advantage of the moment, I swung again, and again, so fast that only the blur of the stick could be seen slicing through the air. All the humiliation, rage, and resentment for my past life surged up, burning my eyes red. At last, I tossed the stick aside and dove straight in, using my hands and feet to mete out punishment. Man or woman, it didn't matter. Both had their hair pulled and faces slapped. Only Vanessa, shielded under David's body, escaped with fewer hits, though I narrowed my eyes and landed several vicious kicks on her backside. Panting, I finally stopped. The two of them, their faces swollen and bruised, seized the chance to cover themselves in bolt, sprinting deep into the reeds without daring to look back. When they were gone, I turned to Jason. "You too. What are you doing here?" "Just passing by," he said evenly. "What a coincidence." I lifted my foot to head home, but suddenly my body went weak. My legs barely able to hold me. I had used too much strength. When I was younger, it had always been like this. Every time after a fight, my energy would drain away, leaving me shaky. Slowly, I turned to Jason. He hesitated, then said, "How about I carry you?" I grinned. "Then I won't be polite." His back was broad and solid, muscles firm, even through his thin shirt. Lying across it, I tilted my head up to gaze at the night sky. A shooting star streaked across the horizon, and instinctively I closed my eyes, silently making a wish. Taking that moment, I began to seriously think about how I would live this new life. After being given a second life, I wanted to pass the college entrance exam. I wanted to earn a lot of money. I wished for the people I cared about to all live good lives. And finally, I cursed David and Vanessa. May they never live peacefully. May they always fall short of me. My mind drifted as sleepiness washed over me. Faintly, I heard the boy carrying me whisper, "Rachel, what did you just wish for?" Thinking of my sun-darkened face, I answered without hesitation. I wished for a jar of snowflake cream. But once a wish was spoken aloud, it would never come true. After that came a long silence, so long that I sank into slumber. Under the gentle moonlight, I faintly heard his voice. "Got it, Rachel." His steps were steady, slow, as though you were carrying the weight of the whole world on his back. "Rachel, did you know?" Angela came running to my house early one morning, grinning ear to ear. "Those two white-eyed wolves, you know, took a nasty fall the other day. They've been laid up for days, can't even work. I heard that every night in the dorm, they scream in pain like ghosts." I coughed, stifling my laughter. "Seems like they still haven't fallen hard enough. Why couldn't they just die from it?" Angela gave me a big thumbs up in admiration. Then she looked me up and down before suddenly blurting, "Honestly, what was David thinking? You're far prettier than Vanessa. She's just pale and skinny. How could her looks compare to yours?" She stared harder and gasped, "Wait, am I seeing things? Did you get fairer? And your skin, it's smoother too. How did you do it? Tell me your secret." I shook the little jar in my hand, uncertain. Maybe because of this snowflake cream. Angela's eyes went wide. "Rachel, are you rich now? Don't tell me you bought it yourself." She paused, her expression tightening as though a thought struck her. "Wait, it wasn't Jason who bought it, was it?" I hesitated for just a second, and the corners of her mouth faltered. Taking a deep breath, she looked me in the eye. "Rachel, be honest with me. Do you still only see him as your brother?" The words caught in my throat, but before I could answer, Jason's face flickered in my mind. Ever since that night, he had been up before dawn to work the fields. At noon, he wolfed down a quick meal before helping the village butcher pigs. In the afternoons, he would walk dozens of miles into town to take odd jobs at the clinic, only returning late at night. My whole family was shocked by the sudden change. We thought maybe someone outside had provoked him. After all, our family's philosophy had always been simple. So long as there was food on the table and life was comfortable, we asked for nothing more. Until one morning, when I opened my door and found a jar of snowflake cream lying quietly on the ground, carefully wrapped in a cloth. It was then I remembered my offhanded wish from a few nights before. At breakfast, my mother even teased my father, saying, Sooner or later, you'll have to give up your spot as the one who spoils our daughter the most. But just a brother, really. I looked at Angela, guilt tugging at me. Sorry, Angela, I have to go feed the pigs. The moment I spoke, her eyes turned red. She cut me off, spun on her heel, and bolted for the door, almost running straight into Jason as he entered. She froze, lowered her head, and rushed past even faster. He had walked in at exactly the wrong or right time. I didn't know how much he had overheard, and suddenly my face burned hot. But his expression was as calm as ever. Rachel, he asked simply, are you going into town today? I hurried to the sewing table, grabbed a freshly made set of clothes, and thrust them into his hands. Wear this. He stood there stunned for a long while before finally asking, you made this, Rachel. I knew exactly what surprised him. At this time, everyone knew some basic sewing, but very few truly understood tailoring. Ordinary stitching was something any villager could do, but making well-cut clothes required the skill of a trained seamstress, and that trade demanded years of practice. It was a respected craft. Our family was fortunate to own an old sewing machine, part of my mother's dowry when she married. In my past life, in order to support David through school, I took on every job I could find, slaughtering pigs, carrying cement, even apprenticing under a tailor. Eventually, I opened my own small shop and later worked in a garment factory until I retired. If not for my failing eyesight and trembling hands in old age, I would never have been reduced to scavenging for a living. So now, making a few outfits was child's play for me. As for the sudden change in me, sooner or later, they would have to get used to it. I kept my expression calm, my heartbeat steady, and replied casually, yes, I made it. I tried out the sewing machine the other day and realized I had a knack for it. My words were pure fabrication, but Jason didn't press me further. While he went to change into the new clothes, I also put on the outfit I had made for myself. Though the fabric was ordinary, clever cutting and stitching made it fit perfectly, highlighting strengths and concealing flaws. My figure was full, unsuited to loose and shapeless styles, but with just a little taper at the waist, the design hid any shortcomings and made me look taller and more graceful. When Jason stepped out in his new clothes, his broad shoulders and slim waist made him look taller, brighter, striking enough to turn heads. I caught myself staring at him, only to realize he was staring at me too. Both of our faces flushed red at once, and we turned away in perfect sync, nearly tripping as we walked out the door. Our steps awkwardly matching. From our village to the county seat was about 15 miles. Most people waited for the production team's tractor and then hitched a ride, but that was slow and inconvenient. Instead, Jason borrowed a bicycle. The main road was smooth, the weather mild, and we arrived before 9 in the morning. This time, his trip to town was officially to sell medicine, though in reality, he was checking in with a patient. I knew he carried with him a collection of family remedies, some for illnesses difficult to treat. He had inherited those prescriptions 7 years ago when my father brought him back to our village. Though my father never spoke much about it, I understood well enough. Jason's background wasn't as simple as he claimed, but everyone has their secrets. He had his and I had mine. We agreed to meet again at noon at the Stay-Toned restaurant. After parting ways, I strolled slowly along the bustling street, observing the clothes people wore. It had been so long that I no longer remembered clearly what fashion in the city looked like in 1977. Most people wore shades of blue or green, the most fashionable items being industrially made shirts, school uniforms, or khaki suits. Walking through the crowd, I could feel eyes lingering on me, hear the hushed whispers. That female comrade's clothes look unusual, but very pretty. I've never seen that style before. The department store doesn't sell it. Could it be imported? But I've never seen it at the Friendship store either. It was clear to me now. With my skill in tailoring and eye for design, making a living in this field here wouldn't be a problem at all. My mood lightened. Afterward, I wandered into the central bookstore. If I wanted to take the college entrance exam, I needed to prepare well. If I remembered correctly, the exams would resume next year, with the first round held at the end of the year. I wanted to be among the very first to be admitted. That meant I had less than a year and a half left. The most important task now was to get textbooks. I searched every corner of the bookstore, but couldn't find the ones I needed. After wandering the bookstore in vain, I finally smacked my forehead in realization. Of course, textbooks still weren't openly for sale at this time. I let out a sigh. This was something I'd have to let my father handle. I was certain he would find a way. Strolling further, I stopped by the supply cooperative. On the counter were the usual 4 types of sweets: sticky rice cakes, sponge egg cakes, peach crisps, and snow cakes. But today, there was something new. Fried milk cakes. Perhaps that was why such a long line had formed. I thought I'd buy some to bring to Angela, a peace offering to soothe her mood. By the time it was my turn, only 1 portion of fried milk cakes remained. Quickly, I handed over my ration ticket and money to the clerk. Just then, a slender hand reached in from the side. "I'll take the fried milk cakes," a girl's voice declared. I turned my head. The speaker was a young woman in a blue dress, polished leather shoes on her feet. Beside her stood a teenage boy in an industrially woven shirt, a Shanghai blue blossom watch gleaming on his wrist. At a glance, anyone could see they were children of a well-off family. Though they had blatantly cut in line, no one dared say a word. The clerk didn't hesitate either, accepting her ticket and money, then wrapping up the cakes to hand over. Strangely enough, they didn't look like the type who would even enjoy such simple village sweets. Sure enough, after buying the cakes, the girl didn't leave, but instead stared directly at me. We locked eyes for 2 seconds before I deliberately turned and walked away without a word. I could tell at once she was looking to stir up trouble, but if my previous life had taught me anything, it was that knowing when to yield could itself be a strength. Behind me, the pair panicked. "Brother, why didn't she just walk away? Shouldn't she beg me to give it up so I could make demands?" "How should I know? Hurry and stop her." The 2 of them rushed ahead to block my path. The girl frowned, confusion plain on her face. "Hey, why'd you just leave like that? You should at least say something. Who knows, maybe I'd even let you have them." I stopped and looked at them as if they were odd creatures. The boy beside her suddenly flushed red, his voice softening. "My sister didn't mean any harm. She just wanted to ask where you had your clothes made." A simple question, yet they had to go in circles because of their arrogant, spoiled attitudes. With that kind of mindset, they'd never succeed in business. I was sure they'd cause trouble again in the future. So I didn't even blink as I answered. "They were made by the village tailor, but he passed away yesterday." "What?" Both of their faces changed instantly, their eyes flickering with unease. Sorry to bother you then. Please take this." The girl shoved the box of fried milk cakes into my hand and ran off, her brother chasing after her. Later, sitting in the stay-toned restaurant with Jason, I told him the story. Still baffled but amused. We quickly shifted topics when he mentioned he'd earned 6 yuan that day. My eyes widened as I rubbed my palms together in excitement. But before I could speak, he pushed the money toward me. "I don't need it. See what we're lacking and buy it." "Jason, you really are my lucky star." I laughed. In the end, we spent all of it in return with our spoils. 3 caddies of pork, a bundle of pencils, and exercise books, and 10 bolts of fabric, earning us some scolding for being wasteful. That evening, I went next door to find Angela. She was chopping feed for her chickens, but when she lifted her head and saw me, her eyes lit up before quickly dropping again. Her hands kept working, though she couldn't quite hide how she kept sneaking glances at the outfit I was wearing. I set the things down, stepped closer, and gently tugged her sleeve. "I brought you fried milk cakes." She turned her face away, the corners of her eyes reddening. "Angela," I asked softly, "do you think the clothes I'm wearing are pretty?" She nodded instinctively before stiffening, forcing herself to hold back. I smiled. "I made them myself. I'll make a set for you too." She jerked her head toward me, tears rolling down her cheeks one after another. "Rachel, why are you like this? Not only are you beautiful, but you're kind, and not only kind, but also so capable." Her words dissolved into sobs as she buried her face in my shoulder, crying for a long while. When she finally calmed down, she wiped her tears away. Her tone was much lighter, as she said, "I've thought it through. As long as you 2 live well together, that's all that matters. After all, he never looked my way anyway. It's my fault for being born like this, with mismatched eyes." Angela always appeared cheerful and carefree, but in truth, she carried deep insecurity about her uneven eyelids, one single, one double. Right now, any words of comfort could easily trigger more self-blame, so I quickly cut her off. "Great beauty, Angela," I teased, tugging her sleeve. "Go try on your new clothes and see if they fit. Tonight, let's go to the elementary school yard and watch a movie, okay?" "Really? There's a movie tonight." Her spirits lifted instantly. She jumped up, tidied things away in a rush, and beamed with excitement. Watching movies was one of the rare entertainments of this era, And in less than a minute, her mood had completely shifted. We didn't leave too late, but by the time we arrived, the schoolyard was already packed. After squeezing through the crowd, we finally managed to find a spot near the screen. The movie hadn't started yet, and children were playing shadow games in front of the projector, while the adults clustered in groups chatting. Gradually, more and more attention turned toward us. Someone exclaimed, "Is that Rachel? Since when did she get so pretty and fashionable?" Right, and next to her, "That's Angela. What are those clothes? I've never seen styles like that before. They don't look store-bought, almost like they were custom-made. Who's so skilled?" In no time, the crowd buzzed with chatter. Angela smoothed her braids, lifted her chin proudly, and declared, "Stop guessing. Rachel made them herself." A brief silence fell before the whole crowd erupted. "What, Rachel made them?" Just then, a discordant voice rang out behind us, followed by a mocking laugh. "Angela, don't joke. Since when did Rachel know how to sew clothes?" Of course, it was Vanessa, and standing beside her was none other than David. Their injuries had clearly healed. There wasn't a trace of them left. When David caught my eye, his gaze flickered with a flash of surprise, but it quickly vanished. He curved his lips into a cold, mocking smile, then glanced at Vanessa with a look that practically spelled out, "See, didn't I tell you? She can't help herself. She'll always come back to me, doing something ridiculous just to catch my attention." Vanessa feigned a sigh. "Oh, Rachel, if only you'd come a little earlier. Then you could have sat next to David." Angela rolled her eyes full of disdain. "Do you two think you're some delicious pastries everyone's dying to sit with? These clothes, Rachel made them. Just because you're ignorant doesn't mean you get to block others from being smart." Vanessa choked at a loss for words. "You talk like you saw her sew them yourself." "Believe it or not, that's up to you," Angela shot back. "Either way, you'll never get the chance to wear them." At that moment, David gave a little fake cough as if to appear important. "Enough bickering, Rachel. Stop trying to save face, making up lies just to grab my attention. What will you do when the truth comes out and you can't cover it up anymore?" I held Angela back before she could lunge forward and slap someone. Smiling faintly, I said, "Whether I sewed them or not, you'll know soon enough. After the movie, everyone is welcome to come to my house and see for themselves." The movie began, but hardly anyone was watching the screen. Curiosity filled the crowd, some gossipy, some intrigued, and some simply enchanted by the idea of beautiful clothes. Everyone seemed to be waiting impatiently for the film to end. In truth, I had to thank those two troublemakers. They'd stirred up such a commotion for me that it created the perfect publicity. 2 hours flew by in a blink. When we had left, it was just Angela and me. But on the way back, an entire crowd followed behind us, flooding into my house and yard until the place was packed with curious onlookers. As I stood there wondering who I should make a set of clothes for first, a young woman at the front of the group spoke up, her eyes shining brightly. "Rachel, can you make me an outfit? I'll run home to get fabric. However you want to do it is fine." I recognized her immediately. Lisa, the daughter of the butcher at the head of the village. Jason had once learned butchering skills from her father. I smiled and agreed. Taking a bolt of fabric, I quickly sketched a few outlines, created a cutting pattern, then sat at the sewing machine and began threading the needle. "Rachel, you're not going to take measurements first," someone asked in surprise. "No need," I replied calmly. "My eyes are the ruler." After more than 30 years of experience, I only needed a glance to know which style of clothing suited which body type. The crowd let out another chorus of astonishment. Vanessa muttered under her breath, "She's overdoing it. Just wait. She won't even know how to work the sewing machine." David stayed quiet, but suspicion flickered in his eyes as well. My hands moved quickly, faster than their eyes could follow. Cut, surge, piece together. The movements flowed like water, seamless and practiced. Gradually, the murmurs in the house faded, until only the steady hum of the sewing machine remained. When I finished, I pressed the garment smooth with the iron and handed it to Lisa. She immediately ran next door to try it on. Minutes later, she lifted the curtain and stepped back out, her face glowing with astonishment and joy. "Rachel, you're amazing," she exclaimed. "The dam broke." The crowd erupted all at once. "This outfit is gorgeous. I want one to wear to my blind date." If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe someone could sew faster than the old tailor in town. My God, who knew Rachel had this kind of talent? From now on, getting new clothes will be so much easier. Lisa was quick. "Later, when orders pile up, we'll have to line up." People started clamoring at once. Rachel, I'll run home to get fabric and money right now. Please make me one too. Me too, me too. And me, I called it first. Don't cut in line. I nodded my agreement, and in an instant, the crowd scattered, rushing home to fetch materials. Soon only two remained, Vanessa and David. David looked at me with complicated eyes. I didn't expect you to have this skill. I'll admit, you really are a little different from the other country girls now. But why didn't you ever say anything before? Vanessa gently tugged his sleeve, and his tone shifted immediately. Rachel, make an outfit for Vanessa. As long as you do that, I'll forgive you for your rudeness last time. That was it. I stepped forward, grabbed him by the collar. At 5'7", I was nearly eye to eye with him. I couldn't hold back anymore, and the words burst out raw. You brainless idiot. What are you to me that you think you can order me around? You think being an educated youth makes you special. With your half-baked education, what do you have to be arrogant about? I've tolerated you long enough. Watch your mouth when you talk to me. You're the kind of man who wants to climb to the sky, but can't even stand steady on the ground, pretending to be a scholar, but in truth, you're nothing but useless trash. You think just because I once liked you, you could strut around as if you could open your own textile factory. That was only because I was blind before. Now, you're not even qualified to carry Jason's shoes. Look in the mirror. What part of you is better than him? Walking around with an empty head, selfish, arrogant, useless, a freeloader through and through. The two of you are equally shameless. Sneaking around together already, aren't you? I bet half the reeds by the riverbank are flattened under you by now. Did you really think I was stupid enough not to see it? Bastard, pay me back 300 yuan. If you don't, I'll report the both of you. Just wait and see, I'll drop every ounce of courtesy. After I had finished cursing them out, I felt completely refreshed while the two of them stood there stiff as statues. So it really was you, Rachel, David stammered, his face shifting rapidly between shock, fear, and fury. They had thought their secret was well hidden, never imagining I had known all along. Worse, they hadn't expected to be caught in the act, beaten within an inch of their pride. Now they had no way out. Their wounds had already healed, so there was no physical evidence left. But I held the true weapon, their shameful secret. Everyone knew in these times, an unmarried man and woman caught having relations could be imprisoned. Just a few days ago, the newspapers even reported a famous male celebrity, sentenced for spending the night with an unmarried woman. Folding my arms, I sneered. Quit stammering. Pay me back. I want the money now. David panicked, but I don't really have that much cash, Rachel. You won't show me any mercy at all. I can't, but Vanessa can. Before she came to the countryside, Vanessa's life hadn't been too bad. Her mother had died young, but her father was a middle school teacher. Only when her family fell into misfortune did she end up sent down to the village. In my past life, before the college entrance exams were reinstated, she couldn't stand rural life and found a way back to the city. At the time, the only ways for an educated youth to return were either through a job assignment or exams. Vanessa spent 280 yuan to buy herself a factory worker's position. As for David, after the exams were restored the next year, he returned to the city to study, living off me the entire time. I said slowly, when she first came here, she brought her entire savings. For over a year now, the two of you have eaten my food and used my things. Did she ever have to spend a single cent? Vanessa, outwardly appearing dependent on David, pretending to be devoted, was in truth selfish and calculating. She always pushed him to sell himself to get her what she wanted, used her body to keep him bound, then sent him to trick me, stepping on everyone else to climb higher. In the end, she even went abroad to study. That was how she reached the top in my past life. When I finished, Vanessa's eyes flickered with guilt. She was only a teenager now, not yet as polished as in my last life, so one glance was enough for me to see right through her. David realized it too and spoke hurriedly, almost pleading. Vanessa, just give it to her first, we can earn it back later. Between going to prison or paying money, Vanessa had no choice. Grinding her teeth, she reluctantly pulled a thick wad of bills from inside her blouse and threw it at me. I don't have a single cent left now. Happy? She snapped, then spun on her heel and stormed away. David glared at me once before rushing after her. I calmly counted 3 crisp red 100 yuan notes, tucked them into my pocket, and felt more satisfied than I had in years. Just then, several girls returned carrying fabric. I collected their payments, wrote down their names, and said, "Line up properly, everyone." My parents came home from work right at that moment. At the gate, a few older women were already praising them. "Oh my, your family is blessed. Rachel is still so young and already has a future. She'll be a seamstress. How wonderful." My father, not yet aware of what was going on, just nodded and smiled politely. My mother, without missing a beat, replied, of course, "My daughter has been smart since she was little, good at everything." After the crowd dispersed, the two of them finally turned to see the long line of people waiting to order clothes. My father lowered his voice to my mother. "Do you know when our daughter learned to sew?" My mother frowned, thought hard, then shook her head. "I don't know either, but if I can't figure it out, then I won't. What's so bad about knowing more skills? No reason to worry about it." My father slapped his thigh. "That's true." From that day on, word of my sewing skills spread across 10 miles and 8 villages. More and more people came, lining up to have clothes made. I didn't become rich overnight, but a steady stream of small earnings flowed in without stopping, and life grew more and more comfortable. Sometimes I was so busy I couldn't keep up, so I had to hand off simple tasks to my mother and to Angela. My mother worked without pay, but for Angela, I calculated her wages based on the number of items she finished. At first, Mrs. Lee seemed a little dissatisfied, but when she saw Angela bringing money home, she immediately shut her mouth and even treated me much more warmly whenever we met. At that time, across the whole country, aside from literacy classes for children, almost no one studied seriously. Textbooks were rare than toilet paper. My father went to great lengths to finally buy 3 sets of books from the black market when I suggested that we all start studying again. Once they confirmed I wasn't feverish to the point of delirium, the whole family, plus Angela, sat down for a family meeting. My father said cautiously, "We'll keep this quiet. Don't let anyone find out and report us." My mother added, "Even if I can only learn a little more, it's still worthwhile." Jason immediately spoke firmly. "I'll listen to Rachel." Angela followed right after. "I support Rachel. Whatever she does is right." I hadn't expected it would take so little convincing. Now that we had books and students, the only thing missing was a teacher. But for us who had grown up in the countryside, the highest level of schooling most had reached was equivalent to middle school, without even graduating. To finish the entire high school curriculum in just over a year and pass into a good university was a mountain of difficulty. I at least had some foundation. In my past life, to be closer to David, I had taken night classes while working, eventually earning a part-time college diploma. In his eyes, that degree was worthless, no better than scrap paper, but I had actually learned quite a lot. The ones who worried me were Jason and Angela. After many days of racking my brain, at last I remembered a name buried in dust from my memories. In my past life, to help David gain a teaching post at a university, I had begged and pleaded everywhere. There was a famous professor of finance, stern on the outside but warm within. When he learned I was from Kairam village, he helped me greatly. Only later did I discover that he had once been sent to Kishu village for labor reform. For years, if he wanted to become his student, he needed real sincerity. So Jason carried 20 kattas of wheat flour. I carried 10 kattas of pork, and Angela brought 2 bolts of cloth along with 2 kattas of white sugar. The 3 of us crossed a mountain ridge, following a narrow path until we reached a small, thatched cottage. We searched for a long time without seeing anyone, until we found him collapsed in the pigsty. Jason rushed forward to check and confirmed that he had fainted from low blood sugar. He carried the man back inside and poured sugar water into his mouth until he slowly revived. He wasn't actually that old, just a little over 50, but the sides of his hair were snow white, making him look much older. When he saw us, he asked flatly, "What do you want with me?" After hearing our explanation, he waved a hand, lay back on the wooden bed and closed his eyes. "I can't teach, take your things back. I'm just a useless old man without any ability." I tried to bargain. "I'm a seamstress. I can make clothes for you free of charge." No response. "I cook well. I can bring you meals every day." Still nothing. "My family has a doctor. He can treat you for free." Not even a twitch. Then I suddenly remembered something. Taking a deep breath, I leaned close to his ear and whispered softly, "It won't be long before the college entrance exams are restored. You'll be able to go home." His eyes snapped open at once. I scratched my nose and smiled faintly. "That's only what I've heard, but the chances are very high. If you don't try, how will you know?" The old man fell silent for a long time before finally speaking, his tone layered with emotions. "You've got guts, kid." Perhaps deep inside, he still harbored a flicker of hope. Or perhaps just this once, he let his heart soften again. In the end, the old man finally nodded in agreement. From then on, every day we used our spare time to come and study with him for 4 to 5 hours. That quiet hillside soon echoed constantly with his powerful shouts. "How many times have I told you, and you still don't understand? With knowledge like this, don't talk about college. You'd have trouble herding pigs." A strict teacher produces capable students, and the results of our studies became clear day by day. Even while focusing on my studies, I never neglected earning money. Before long, I had managed to save a decent sum. My very first custom tailoring contract came that evening. Jason told me that one of his patients had admired the clothes he was wearing, clothes I had made. And now she wanted me to come measure her and make a few outfits. So the next morning, I followed him into the city. We entered an old Soviet-style villa that looked worn and aged on the outside. But inside, it had been refurbished to gleam with luxury. It wasn't hard to guess the owner was no ordinary person. The lady of the house was a woman of about 20, dressed in an elegant long dress. Her beauty carried an indescribable allure, heightened by a tiny red mole between her brows. The moment I saw her face clearly, I nearly lost control of my excitement. John Yadjin, one of the most famous actresses of the 1970s and 1980s. There was a time in my past life when I had been obsessed with her. My house had been covered in her posters. I'd heard she married early to a high-ranking official. Right now, she only had a modest level of fame. But by the end of 1978, thanks to the film Green Cat, she would explode into nationwide stardom and ignite a fashion craze across the country. John Yadjin greeted me warmly. Smiling, she waved her hand. "Don't be shy. Sit down and have some tea. We'll talk slowly." When she learned I was only 17, she showed not the slightest doubt about my abilities. Instead, she praised me for having natural talent from a young age. She eagerly shared her ideas and requirements, hoping I could bring them to life. Then, with a trace of helplessness, she added, "Just look at me, saying so many difficult things. Maybe my ideas are too fanciful. I've gone to many seamstresses, but they are either too conservative or too rigid in their thinking. None of them could create what I wanted. But it's fine, Rachel. Just try. Follow your instincts. Don't feel pressured." I held on to my advantage. After all, I had lived through an entire lifetime and knew her aesthetic tastes well as the fashion trends that would soon follow. While Jason was finishing her checkup, I picked up pen and paper and began sketching. By the time he was done, I had completed the design. John Yadjin stared at my drawing in astonishment, then suddenly leapt to her feet, so excited, she stomped the floor. "My God, Rachel, this is exactly what I wanted. When can you start? Any price is fine." I beamed. "Actually, I've seen your films, Miss Zhang. I really admire you. As for price, just the usual rate, and about timing, you don't need to worry. I'll prioritize yours." I made sure to show my sincerity. Sure enough, her eyes lit up even more. The formality between us faded, replaced with genuine warmth. Of course, I also had my own calculations. Later, when I expanded and created my own fashion brand with John Yadjin's support, I would have the perfect spokesperson. Even if it was just an ordinary blouse, if she wore it, it would instantly become a trend. At that point, I'd never have to worry about finding customers again. Just then, a pair of teenagers entered. The moment they stepped through the door, the boy immediately winced. "Auntie, the little miracle doctor, is he here yet? I've been feeling so tired lately." "Let him check me." The boy winced as soon as he entered. The girl beside him wasn't about to be left behind. In a soft, spoiled tone, she said, "Auntie, is the little seamstress here? I don't have any pretty clothes to wear these days. Let her make me 2 new outfits, please." John Yadjin's eyes softened as she chided them gently. "She's right here." The two of them turned their heads, and when our eyes met, both of them blurted out in unison, "It's you." What a coincidence. It was the same brother and sister I'd bumped into at the co-op, the ones who had fought me over that last fried milk cake. John Yadjin tilted her head in curiosity. "What's this? You know each other." This time, all 3 of us answered at once. "No, we don't." They were guilty about their rudeness the last time and feared I might tell on them. As for me, I was embarrassed about the casual eye I had tossed out that day. Only Jason, of course, saw through everything at a glance. Trying to cover the awkwardness, the boy sneaked to glance at me, his face flushing. "Auntie, I was just surprised because this seamstress is so beautiful." Jason didn't say a word, but when he prescribed the boy's medicine, he quietly added an extra dose of coptis root. Winter passed into summer. Harvest turned into storage, and then came another winter. In August 1977, on what seemed like an ordinary day, the loudspeakers in the village suddenly blasted out news that shook the entire nation. Workers, peasants, educated youth who had gone up the mountains and down to the countryside, veterans, and high school graduates all could now register for the National College Entrance Examination. As long as they had an education equivalent to high school, they could voluntarily sign up for the unified exam. The announcement of the exam's restoration instantly became the hottest topic across the country. Textbooks that no one had cared about before suddenly became so scarce they were fought over until they sold out completely. Some were overjoyed while others panicked. For those who had abandoned their studies for too long, 4 months of review was nowhere near enough to build up knowledge and improve their chances. So for the last 4 months, we put everything else aside on that quiet hillside. More and more people gathered to study. Teenagers, middle-aged workers, even elderly men and women. All of them looked toward the old man standing in the center, pouring his strength into every lesson. He was their final ray of light, rekindling hope for the future. December 1977, when the first snow blanketed the ground, the college entrance examination officially began nationwide. More than 6 million candidates walked into the exam halls. It was the largest exam in world history, lasting over a month before concluding. When filling out my application, I chose fashion design. Even though I had learned it on my own, if I wanted to go further, I needed a formal foundation. Jason wanted to study medicine, though he wasn't sure yet whether to pursue traditional Chinese medicine or Western medicine. I urged him to choose surgery. Jason had a natural gift. His precision and speed when slaughtering pigs was unmatched. With a single touch, he could locate every bone. And before the pig even had time to bleed, he had already finished the job. That was the instinct of a born surgeon. More importantly, cosmetic surgery departments were already opening in hospitals across the country. If I remembered correctly, in about 5 years, the beauty industry would explode in the major cities. That would be a gold mine. As for Angela, from the beginning, she had been firm in choosing finance. While we waited for results, I continued my tailoring business. Jason stayed busy treating patients, and Angela had her own unique way of easing stress, standing at the edge of the village to gossip. One day she came running to me, brimming with excitement. "Rachel, did you hear? David and Vanessa aren't even taking the college entrance exam this time." I was taken aback. "What? What do you mean?" "I heard the two of them had a huge fight. Just 2 days before the exam, Vanessa secretly met with the son of the steel mill director, and David caught them in the act. What happened next was chaos. The 3 of them ended up in a violent fight. In the scuffle, Vanessa fell to the ground, clutching her stomach and crying out in pain. At the hospital, it was revealed that she had miscarried. I froze in shock. Whose child was it? Angela just shrugged. Not sure, but I heard the very next morning, the 2 of them packed up and left the city, probably too ashamed to stay. Maybe they've gone to live somewhere else. I said nothing. It was all too ironic, but I no longer cared. The whole village was busy preparing for a new era, and soon enough, those 2 were forgotten. The birth of the Rachel brand, April 1978. The long-awaited admission letter finally arrived. At Aunt Elise house in Kaidam village, Angela's heart, which had been hanging by a thread for so long, could finally rest. She threw her arms around me, crying and laughing at the same time. "This is amazing, Rachel. Finally, I get to go to Beijing with you guys." Before we set off, a letter arrived from Beijing, addressed to Jiang's Union. Only then did I learn that Jason's real name had never been Xuanxian. He was actually Jiang's Union, a descendant of imperial physicians. But that name wasn't one he could use. The letter explained that his grandfather was on his deathbed and hoped he could return to Beijing immediately to rejoin the family lineage. We rushed to pack and boarded the train. After 3 days and nights of rattling across the country, we arrived only to find his grandfather had already been buried. The Jiang family was a huge clan, filled with both decent people and schemers. Everyone was eager to seize the opportunity of the old man's passing to fight over inheritance. With Jason's parents long gone, no one truly welcomed him back. We weren't even offered a cup of tea before being thrown out. Still, we didn't leave empty-handed. They handed him an abandoned factory in Beijing and 50,000 yuan, a mere trifle for a rich family, but enough to let poor folks like us live comfortably for a lifetime. Jason said firmly, "What's mine is yours." It felt like fate itself had delivered us both a pillow just when we needed rest. With a location in capital ready, I immediately brought my parents to Beijing. Together, we opened a garment factory and officially founded the Rachel fashion brand. By September 1978, the Rachel factory was up and running. Thanks to my connection with actress Zhang Yajun, Rachel became the costume supplier for the film Green Cat. At the end of 1978, Green Cat was a massive box office success, and the costumes worn by the lead actors instantly set off a nationwide craze. For the first time, the Rachel label appeared before the public, and my brand began to build its reputation. Drawing from my memories of my previous life, I invested in a series of blockbuster films and stayed ahead of trends by mass-producing fashionable clothing. Flowy blouses, floral shirts, vests, sportswear, red dresses, jeans, flared trousers, knit sweaters. Soon, Rachel became famous throughout the country. Wearing Rachel designs was seen as the standard of fashion. From head to toe, from the big to the small, Rachel could provide it all. As we expanded into larger markets, by 1983, the Rachel factory in Beijing was bringing in an average of 300,000 yuan a day from clothing sales, sometimes even soaring to 600,000 or 700,000 at peak times. Riding the wave of the times, after graduation, we moved to Shanghai to develop further. In 1986, the Rachel Aesthetic Hospital officially opened. Nose jobs, breast augmentations, eyelid surgeries. Each procedure cost over 300 yuan, yet customers poured in endlessly. From fashion, I had shifted into beauty, pouring everything into this booming industry. Marriage could wait, for now money came first. Then, one night, after we had just finished a round of exercise in bed, Jason suddenly buried his head against my shoulder, rubbing lightly like a spoiled child. "Rachel, when are we finally going to get married?" I shot him a sideways glance, then calmly pulled out my little planning notebook. Inside were pages filled with my investment goals. 1993, buy a house in Pudong, Shanghai. 1995, buy a Ihun Courtyard home in Beijing. 2001, invest in Mutai stocks. 2009, buy Bitcoin. 2010, invest in smartphones. 2019, invest in the internet. I smiled casually and replied, "Sorry, but your request has just been rejected by your girlfriend. She plans to make money first." The moment the words left my lips, the world suddenly spun. I was pressed down onto the bed, pinned firmly beneath him with a strength that showed just how frustrated he was. His hot breath brushed against my ear, his voice low and aggrieved. "Got it." Director Jason, years later, when I looked back on everything I had gone through, it felt like a long, vivid dream. From the foolish girl who once poured her heart out for people who betrayed her, I had been reborn into someone strong enough to protect those I loved and fearless enough to chase what I deserved. My fashion brand had become a household name. My beauty hospitals kept expanding, and with every risk I took, wealth and opportunities poured in. But the thing that mattered most wasn't the money. It was the fact that my parents no longer had to worry about food or clothing, that Anne no longer hid her insecurities behind laughter, and that Jason had finally found his rightful place in the world as a brilliant surgeon. As for David and Vanessa, they were nothing more than fading shadows of a past life. Their names no longer held power over me. I didn't care whether they were struggling or thriving, because they simply didn't matter anymore. My life was no longer tied to theirs. One crisp autumn morning in Shanghai, Jason knelt in front of me with a velvet box in his hand. His voice trembled, but his eyes were steady as they locked onto mine. "Rachel," he said, "we've built everything together. Our dreams are future. This time, I won't let you push me away. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision, but this time they weren't born of pain. I smiled through them, finally giving him the answer he had been waiting for all these years. Yes, and just like that, my story found its true ending, not in tragedy, not in betrayal, but in a rebirth of love, dignity, and the life I had always dreamed of.